how was Georgia able to beat Alabama? So last night, my Georgia Bulldogs finally got the best of Nick Saban, beating him in the most important game of the year. We finally did it. We finally overcame the hump. The Georgia curse is no more. And for the first time in 41 years, the Dogs take home a national championship trophy. So there's three main ways that I believe that Georgia won this ball game. And I'm going to touch on each one of those. The first one of those is the rush defense. Alabama, how did they win against Cincinnati? It was Brian Robinson, their running back number 4. He rushed for over 200 yards, a career high, against Cincinnati in that semifinal matchup. And he was the real cornerstone of Alabama in that semifinal matchup. It was a huge reason in why they won. The quarterback didn't have to do much. The defense played phenomenal, but Brian Robinson in that rushing attack, they gave Cincinnati everything, and that was the reason they won that game. Last night, their running backs had 73 yards on 3 yards per carry. Now, they technically only had 30 yards rushing on 28 attempts. That's because in college football, oddly enough, they count sacks towards rushing yards, which I think is really dumb. Sacks, quarterbacks dropping back is not a rushing attempt. So they need to remove that from college football in the stat book as soon as possible. Just a thought. But to get back on track, their running backs, Brian Robinson and Trey Sanders, 73 yards all game on 3 yards per carry. That's what Georgia's defense has done all year. They've only given up 3 rushing touchdowns throughout the course of the season. And no team has really been able to establish a rushing attack. Florida sort of did in the first half against Georgia. And then when they fell down really big at halftime, it was too late. That's the first way that Georgia beat Bama. It was the their rush defense. The second way Georgia beat Alabama was their red zone defense. Not just their rushing defense in the red zone, but just their defense in general. And they've done this all year. They made opportunities when they needed them most. They capitalized in the biggest parts of the game. Bama got inside the 30-yard line 6 times, had to attempt 5 field goals. 4 of them made, 1 of them blocked. They had 4 trips in the red zone and could only get a touchdown once. I mean, that was really the story of the night. Bama couldn't capitalize. And yeah, Georgia had some drives on their offensive side where they couldn't capitalize either. But more or less, Bama was the team that had the opportunity to blow that thing open in the first half and in the third quarter until James Cook's 62-yard run. I believe it was 62. So yeah, that's what Georgia's defense has done all year. I mean, they're the best defense. They're the best red zone defense. They're the best run defense. And it really showed last night. This is the Georgia defense I thought we were going to see in the SEC championship. But Bama got the best of us then. We got the best of them last night, for the most part. And the main reason Georgia won that game last night, the main reason we won last night is Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett was the main reason that Georgia won the game last night. Not the defense. Not Brock Bowers, not the rushing attack. And I sort of mean that in a serious way, and I sort of don't. Well, I mean in a serious way, but here's what I mean by that. Stetson Bennett, the narrative around him all year has been he needs to do enough to win. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, we know how talented this roster is. If he just does enough, doesn't turn the football over, does what he needs to do, Georgia's going to win big games. And that's what he did last night. You see, the difference was between the last time that Georgia played Bama. Stetson Bennett's played Bama 3 times in his career, including last night. The first time he played him, 3 interceptions. The second time he played him, 2 interceptions. Last night, 0 interceptions. And that's why we won. He didn't turn the ball over. He did what he was supposed to. He maintained the football. No turnovers for the Dogs. And that's why we won the ball game. Stetson Bennett. He wasn't the cornerstone of why we won, but he was the reason. You see where I'm getting at? Like, Stetson Bennett, he had early jitterbugs on that first drive. That really worried me. I mean, the way he dropped back on play 1 when he got sacked, you could tell he was nervous. He was jittery. And then on play 2, he fumbled the ball. It was a contactless forced fumble. I mean, he forced the fumble himself. No Alabama player was in the process of making a hit on him, and he just lost the ball on play 2 for the Georgia offense. And at that point, I was worried about Stetson. But he overcame the nerves, and he did enough. He didn't turn the ball over. He was efficient, and he really played a clean ball game. 17 to 26, 224 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and the big key, no turnovers. That's why we won the ball game. That's why Georgia won the ball game. He did enough. The defense did their thing, and I'm going to get to Bryce Young in a minute because I really have high praise for him after last night. But the defense took advantage in the times they needed to in the red zone. The blocked field goal. They made big plays at big times, 2 interceptions, and the offense maintained themselves in the ball game, and then took advantage at the end. And I think Georgia's approach was really, really good. They really played this game up to date and up to each minute. And what I mean by that is we knew John Mechie wasn't playing, right? He tore his ACL in the first Georgia-Bama matchup. And then when Jameson Williams went down, Kirby Smart knew Bama didn't have the playmakers to bust anything open. Cameron Latu had a big reception, but besides that, Bama could not get any big plays going because they had no John Mechie, no Jameson Williams, 2 guys that each have first-round potential in next year's NFL draft. And when Georgia knew both of those guys weren't going to be in the ball game, all Georgia needed to do was stay in this thing, don't be too aggressive, because late in the ball game, Georgia's going to have more playmakers than Alabama will, and Georgia's going to be the one that can have the opportunity to blow the doors off this game. That's just how it was. I mean, Jameson Williams and John Mechie are both out. Playmakers were in Bama's favor game 1 and Georgia's favor game 2. So Georgia knew that they would have the opportunity with Brock Bowers and Zamir White and James Cook, George Pickens to blow the thing off and really open the doors to this game. So that's what they did. They just played a little field goal game in the first half, did their thing, and then when they needed to, they made more plays than Bama because they had more playmakers. That simple. So at halftime of the game, I want to talk about this for a second. I was going on social media to see what people were reacting to in the first half, and you have all these comments saying, "This game's boring. It's a field goal game. I don't want to watch this." The people that are commenting this or tweeting this are probably the people that spend their Saturdays watching Big 12 football where the defenses can't stop a fly. That's probably what football they're used to watching. Boring football? I don't think it's boring football. I think it's good defense. It makes no sense to me. The people that are saying this are either fans of Big 10, Big 12, ACC, Pac-12, the non-dominant conferences, with an exception of a few teams that don't have good defenses. And what we saw last night in the first half was good offense and good defense. I mean, quite simply, good offenses don't turn the ball over. They didn't. Neither team had a turnover in the first half. And good defenses don't give up big plays. We didn't have much big plays in that first half. That was NFL football. That was the kind of half that you see on Sundays. Because, I mean, that field was filled with 90% players that are going to be playing at some point, somewhere on Sundays in the next few years. Just thought. That game was not boring. That first half was very entertaining to me. Although I was very nervous as a Georgia fan, if that game happened, if that exact same half happened between, say, a Pac-12 team and a Big 12 team or a Big 10 team or whatever, a team that I have no correlation with as a Georgia Bulldog fan, between two teams that have no correlation to me, I would have found that half very entertaining. I mean, it's good football. America wants better, and we got better last night. Just saying. All right, so I want to talk about Bryce Young and what he did last night. I want to give Bryce Young some kudos after his performance last night. He really did all he could to keep his team in the ballgame. He threw 2 interceptions on the stat sheet, and one of them was it was a pass that he shouldn't have made. It was on that drive when they were down 8, the Keely Ringo pick 6. He should not have made that throw. But when I went back and looked at his first interception, which when you look at it, you were like, okay, that was a very arrogant throw, a very misplaced ball, Bryce Young. You should not have thrown that. It went right into the lap of Christopher Smith, the Georgia DB. But when you look at it, it was an unbelievable play by Christopher Smith. He showed man coverage. I don't have the film in front of me. This would be a good time to do a film breakdown. But he had his eyes on another receiver like he was playing man coverage. And then he took his eyes off the receiver at the last second and ran over to help the number 2 receiver, and he picked the ball off. It was a great play. And if I'm Bryce Young, it looked like a one-on-one shot with your receiver on a lesser DB, and I'm taking that matchup, and then Christopher Smith makes an unbelievable disguise play to get a pick. But yeah, the one that happened, the Keely Ringo pick six, was a bad throw. But Bryce Young had 369 yards last night, and those were not empty stats. Those were not garbage time stats. Those were absolutely earned. Every yard that Bryce Young got last night through the air was earned. It was a bloodbath to get every yard because he was down his first 2 receivers. 2 of the best receivers in college football, Jameson Williams, John Mechie. So, you have true freshmen out there at wideout, and he was asked to keep his team in the ballgame against the best defense in the country without your top 2 receivers, and he did it. He had to throw 57 times, completed 35 against the best defense in the country. That 369 yards that he got was earned, not given. Bryce Young did all that he could. And there was a couple throws last night that I was like, oh my goodness, this dude's going to be amazing in the NFL. And this is coming from a Georgia fan, right? So don't think for a second I'm being biased towards him. And there was one play where I remember he was like rolling out off his back foot, getting pressured by Georgia's edge rushers, and just launches it up right into the breadbasket of number 84, and it just went right through his arms. You guys might remember that play. I believe it was in the 4th quarter. Maybe when it was 18-13 or something like. No, I don't know. But Bryce Young made some unbelievable throws last night that if you give him Jameson Williams and John Mechie, they come down with those balls. I'm just saying Bryce Young, with the situation he was given, did all that he could. But the reason that Georgia won this ball game is Bryce Young and that offense couldn't capitalize on enough opportunities in the red zone. That's really what it came down to. The Georgia defense made more plays than the Bama offense. And Stetson Bennett didn't make any plays for the Bama defense like he had the past 2 games they've played. He had 5 interceptions in the past 2 games against Bama. This time he had 0. And that's the reason Georgia won the game. That's simple.